going to be first to the floor here.
First to the floor podcast. Shout out to Australia.
Jordan Crawford, nice move with the dribble.
Here's driving on Stoudemire. The jumper, yes!
What a diving save by the guard.
Yeah! Boston wins!
Tatum drives down and throws it down!
You guys are talking about a dynasty. Here's where it is, right here.
That's enough for the tie.
The best team in the world right now.
Marcus Smart at the buzzer.
Fireman in the deck.
Welcome in, First to the Floor podcast. Ben Vallis here, along with Wayne Spoonie. Spoonie, it's been a little while since we've done 1v1 on the pod, man. How you doing?
I'm good, bro. It's been a very busy summer. I'm in the midst of what I would refer to as a midlife crisis. Some people buy Ferraris and nice cars. I'm just really into Magic cards again all of a sudden. So it's an investment, that's totally what it is, and not an addiction. So we're good there. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot less of a financially crippling investment, I would imagine, not knowing
Barely.
anything about it. So, I'm good, man. I'm about to get on a plane to London, of all places, and spend the next 24 hours in a tube in the sky, heading over there for work. But taking my podcasting gear, I'll probably have more time to podcast, if anything, because I'll be solo, no family. So looking forward to that. But we thought on this show we'd get into, I guess, the Paul George, Jaylen Brown comparisons. The dust has well and truly settled on not just the Jaylen Brown trade, but really anything interesting as far as what can go on through the midst of an NBA offseason. And as the dust has settled, we've started to look forwards. And I don't know about you, Spoonie. I miss the Celtics. Like, I'm ready. There was some like battle wounds, some scar tissue from the last couple of seasons, and didn't mind a little bit of a break there, but I'm like well and truly ready to see the Boston Celtics play basketball again. And so with that, we're looking forward to like, okay, what does this look like? Paul George instead of Jaylen Brown. And there's a growing cohort of Celtics fans who are really starting to look at things through the lens of Paul George might be a more complementary player than Jaylen Brown, at least as it pertains to the dynamic of this Jason Tatum-led team. So I'll throw over to you to get us started. Like, how does one begin that argument? If you're talking, for instance, to a Jaylen Brown stan, of which there are many and who we love, how are you starting to begin to elevate a pitch to them that things might be better in the short term with Paul George?
Can I just say, everyone, welcome to the Jaylen Brown trade truther podcast. I feel like I especially was very early on being like, this is actually a good thing, and we're all gonna be happy with this trade in time. Look, is Paul George better than Jaylen Brown? No, but I do think there's an argument to be made that the specific things that Paul George is good at will fit a little bit more seamlessly in the Celtics, and especially next to Jason Tatum and next to White and Pritchard. And I think Pritchard, to me, is especially the guy that I think they want to elevate the role and get him on ball and get him creating more often. And there's just not a lot of room for that with both the Jays and Derek White healthy. Whereas the biggest difference between Paul George and Jaylen Brown is that Paul George is just going to have the ball a whole hell of a lot less. And maybe the most important thing is he's a much deadlier shooter off the catch than Jaylen Brown. I mean, he's a 39% field goal percent shooter. He's basically been above 40% on catch and shoot threes for a decade. He's an elite gunner from three. And Jaylen's just not really that guy. And he has those moments where he gets the catch and shoot game going, but Jaylen's utility as an offensive player is about getting you high volume, medium efficiency buckets. And that sounds disparaging. It's not. There's incredible value in having a guy that you can just give him the ball and he can go get you a look whenever you want at sort of 57% true shooting, right? That has tremendous value, especially in the playoffs. Paul George is not that guy. He used to be even better than Jaylen Brown. He's not that guy anymore. But what he is an elite 6'9" spacer that will absolutely, utterly punish teams when they help off of Jason Tatum in a way that I'm not totally sure Jaylen did all the time. And I think especially when you look at the way Jaylen spoke and played this year, like I think he would have had a very difficult time stepping into a reduced role. So you
Yeah.
just kind of eliminate that problem entirely by turning him into Paul George.
Yeah, just the division of roles and shot profile and shot hierarchy. These are just puzzle pieces that fit together much more snugly. And yeah, like we'll get to the sort of the possession maxing, Missoula ball, complementary aspects as well. But just the fact that Paul George will be more comfortable settling into like literally a more complementary role. And there was a question in the chat, which maybe we can get to about like who's driving the team when Jason Tatum goes to the bench. Like that has always been a problem. Even in the Jaylen Brown era, the Tatumless, like the on-off numbers for Tatum have always been glaring, even in 2024. So that's going to remain an issue when your like top 5 perpetual All NBA player is on the bench. It's going to be a problem. But I mean that shot diet will shift a little bit, obviously with Jaylen Brown gone. But Paul George as a connector. And as an elite play finisher in the sense of playing off of Jason Tatum, I think that balance, both on and off the court, like in the locker room as well. And again, Spoonie, like really important context. Everything that Jaylen Brown said sort of during and almost immediately after the season ended has to be factored into this conversation in terms of I guess how we're looking favorably on this Paul George connection. I want to get to the defense as well, but is there anything sort of more offensively complementary from PG's perspective?
Yeah, and this is Rui. You touched on it briefly, and Rui's longtime listener. Spoonie and Ben, if you can explain who's driving the team with JT rests, I'll be a bit more chilled. So Peyton Pritchard played 719 minutes without Jaylen Brown on the court last year. Jaylen Brown played 695 minutes without Peyton Pritchard on the court. The offense was better with Pritchard on the court and Jaylen off than it was with Jaylen on the court without Pritchard. The defense was better with Pritchard on the court without Jaylen than Jaylen without Pritchard. The offense was 121.5 points per 100 possessions. The second leading offense last year in offensive efficiency was the Boston Celtics at 121.1. So we would be the second in between Denver at first and us at second in offensive efficiency. In the minutes, the 700 minutes Pritchard played without Jaylen Brown on the court last year. That's a very, very large sample size, and it's not boosted. Like there's not a ton of Tatum minutes in there, right? Because often in the past, you could bring up this same dichotomy, and it's like, well, without Tatum, or with Tatum rather, of course that makes sense. Tatum and Pritchard have always murdered people. He did not have the Tatum safety blanket last year, and Pritchard still drove elite offensive efficiency against bench units. And that's what he does. Like that. Is he a number one creator against starters? Absolutely not. But he has always been able to drive healthy offense against bench units. And coming off the season, like they clearly trust him to do even more of that next year. And maybe that is kind of terrifying, but you've got him, you've got Derek White, and you've got a different way to play basketball, and that is like Nimi Keita and Mitchell Robinson giving Pritchard screens, rolling to the rim, and rebounding missed shots as well. So there's options. It might not always be pretty, but I suspect it will be sort of ruthlessly effective against bench units next year. So I'm not super worried about, like, I'm as worried about the non-Tatum minutes as I would be with or without Jaylen Brown, because throughout both of their entire career, we've lost or barely won the non-Tatum minutes and blown the fucking doors off of people in the Tatum minutes. And it's always been like that, regardless of whether Jaylen is on or off the court.
Yeah, I think where it still potentially bothers me is like in the playoffs, where because you said ruthlessly effective for the regular season, and like Not only do I believe that, but I'm super ready for just like that version of Celtics basketball this year, where like obviously it's going to be very Tatum centric when he's on the court, and it should be. And Tatum's just overall player archetype, I think, lends itself better to that style of basketball. We've got plenty of sample size there as well. When that goes out the window slightly is the playoffs, where like you do need someone who can just like kind of clear out and go for it, especially in those later rounds. And this, we have to bring this up. Like, while there's a lot that's more complimentary about Paul George over Jason Tatum, again, within the dynamic of this team, availability or lack thereof in Paul George's career, especially the latter half, like, is he even going to be there in the playoffs to play a version of that role, that sort of second play finisher in lieu of Tatum being on the court? We have to call it out before people in the comments, I guess, call us out for not mentioning that. But absolutely going to be a factor as well. But like, everything you said there, like funneled through the lens of the playoff, Spoonie, just like, how do you reconcile with that in your mind?
What? I think if you look at the Jaylen Brown who played the Pacers and the Mavs in 2024, you think, man, we're really going to miss him in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not been that guy the last two postseasons. Like, he had his moments in the Philly series, but he and Derek White need to shoulder a massive percentage of the blame for blowing that series. Yeah. Like, Jaylen was terrible against the Knicks. Fucking terrible. And maybe that's not fair because he was hurt. Fine. But then, like, it's not like he, put all the doubts to rest in this postseason. So will we, should we miss the 2024 playoff version of Jaylen Brown? Absolutely. Did that guy still exist? Was that just kind of a hot streak? Was it because he was surrounded by Drew Holiday, that version of Derek White, Jason Tatum, Kristaps Porzingis, that it was like the perfect infrastructure for him to succeed? And when that goes away, he kind of just reverts back to like being moderately efficient and getting, I don't know the answer to that, but I do think there's an argument that like the dude we're missing isn't here anymore anyway. Like, wasn't that guy the last 2 years?
And at this price point, it's a gamble to hang around and find out any longer. And again, like, I can't say this enough times, but like, Jaylen Brown, incredible player. Loved being a fan of Jaylen Brown. Wish him all the best. Miss him already, but like, at this price point and what he was giving us and what we're talking about, like what he may very well be likely to give us or not give us, it's risky to hang on, especially in the climate of the new CBA. So it makes sense to move on in that regard. There's a lot more to get to. Like, I really want to talk about the fit as far as this concept that everyone's been kicking around this year, as far as possession maxing, efficiency mogging. I've heard it referred to as well, Spoonie. But we've got to pay the bills very quickly. So very quickly, a word from our friends over at Prize Picks. Actually, I just realized I forgot to bring up the B reel. Here we go. All right, Prize Picks. It's a scorching summer, and you can make all your picks on Prize Picks. The WNBA and baseball seasons are heating up, and with big tennis slams and major golf tournaments on the horizon, there's no better place for all your summer sports picks than Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. I think I'm going to get more into the WNBA this summer, Spoonie, and Prize Picks is helping me do it. Have you seen the new rookie in Minnesota, Olivia Miles? She's super fun to watch, and I've been putting her in my lineup basically every game. I can add her points and assists to the lineup. Then I'll add one more player and enjoy the night's games. Plus, I can stack a game winner, spread, or total from the W on top of my player picks to get even bigger payouts when I'm right. One lineup, one app, all the picks. Prize Picks is available in all 50 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. The biggest stars in women's basketball are in the heart of their season, and there's no better place to run your game than than Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. We've got MVPs raising their games to new heights and a rookie class ready to take over, all while teams are fighting for playoff positioning. Make a lineup with player stats, pick game winners, spreads, or totals, and combine your picks in the same platform. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 off instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 bet. Again, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. Spoon, you got a couple of WNBA related picks for us there?
This is how you know you've been podcasting with a guy for a very, very long time.
Oh,
Man, you know who was included in one of my WNBA picks I put in before we started this show? And we did
Who's
not
that?
talk about this. Olivia Miles.
Amazing.
So imagine that. Look at that.
Chemistry.
I have Veronica Burton, who apparently is a guard for Vegas. Got to be Vegas. More 1.5 3-point made. And then Olivia Miles of Minnesota, more 1.5 threes. So we're going the two. Olivia Miles is nasty. Like, she is just legitimately awesome. And she looks cool as hell with like the glasses and the hair. So all in on her, more 1.5 threes made. And Veronica Burton, longtime fan, more 1.5 threes made. I'm sticking to the twos because when I try to go three, I lose. And last time I did two with Tajon Salon's sister and won. So we're coming off a win. So we're trying to get a heater going. Hopefully Olivia Miles has got us.
Hopefully. And look, WNBA, increasingly big fan over here. So if you're looking for a way to further enhance your hoops viewing experience, regardless of what form of the game you're watching, check out Prize Picks because it's a great way to add a little spice to your hoops viewing experience and use that code CLNS to get yourself, I think it was $50 instantly, which is also applicable to the upcoming NFL season as well. So get on that and support us and the network CLNS by using that code on sign up. And thanks for bringing those picks, Spoonie. Back to Paul George, back to, I guess I want to make sure we focus on like why he's more compatible with Missoula ball and possession maxing. It probably helps like Spoonie to explain the concept of possession maxing first and why there's this kind of like shift towards that mindset in the NBA. What's your elevator pitch for possession maxing?
Yeah, so essentially, right, there's multiple ways to generate extra possessions, and there's multiple ways to lose possessions. And the big one is where I really look at the two main ones to me are the turnover battle. Do you force turnovers and do you protect the basketball? And the rebounding battle. Do you end defensive possessions and do you generate extra shots by offensive rebounding? And I think there's somewhat more to it than that. Like you can get into like, okay, what styles of play feed into that, right? The Celtics play molasses slow. We've been one of the two slowest teams in the NBA for like a decade, basically. And part of that is it's a lot easier to limit turnovers when you're not playing fast, right? It's a lot, you make sure you get shots on goal. You limit turnovers when you take a bunch of threes because you're not constantly driving into paint, driving into defenders. Shout out the Heat in 2023 as we coughed up the ball over and over and over, trying to drive into the paint, right? And then also it's partly personnel, and that is a huge part of it, right? You get guys who can rebound and you get guys who force turnovers. And you get dudes who make correct, quick decisions offensively. So they're not overly safe, which can grind your offense to a halt all on its own, but they also don't make dumb decisions. And I think if you're comparing offensively Paul George to Jaylen Brown, to me, the decision-making tree, the speed at which those decisions are made, I think that is Jaylen's main weakness. He's gotten better at it as he's gotten, as he's aged and as he's become a better player. He's gotten much better at making the correct decisions, but it's just not a strength, man. He's always been super high turnover, basically his entire career. He had 4 turnovers a game per 75 possessions last season. Paul George was at 2.1. So basically half the turnovers, and that's on a per possession basis. It's not just about minutes. It's not just per game.
Yeah.
So like to me, like the primary thing, and then like I don't know how if we want to shift the defense, but also Paul George is much better at forcing turnovers as well. So PG not only limits them on the offensive end, but he's going to force them on the defensive end. And when you're looking at sort of the global way the Celtics are trying to build this team, it starts to make a lot of sense why we were comfortable getting Paul George as sort of essentially the contract filler.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, quickly before we shift to defense. So yeah, turnover rate, you mentioned it, like as far as just more efficiently seeing possessions through to hopefully successful completion, but 10.2% turnover rate compared to Jaylen's 12.7 last year. And this is like less, in fact, it's not an advanced metric at all, but I was looking at just, again, the complementary stats and the frequency of shots that Paul George took last year while taking 0 dribbles, 41%. Jaylen Brown, 16%. Now, look,
That's crazy.
very different roles, but
Yes.
if that's not indicative of each player's expectations going into each possession and each game, I don't know what is. And that should be a huge indicator in terms of the role that Paul George is willing to play. And then you talked about it, the catch and shoot metrics, taking advantage of Jason Tatum's gravity. Like, it's a very easy argument to make because it's a difficult one to make to Celtics fans because we've been loving the Jaylen Brown experience. But look, for every play where Jaylen Brown has put his head down, gotten to the rim, and finished spectacularly under duress, there's been multiple more plays where he's kind of lost the ball and it's been very anti-possession maxing where we may have had an incredible play drawn up to get, one or more multiple open options, but he's lost the ball prematurely within the confines of that possession. And that's been the duality of the Jaylen Brown experience. So again, another argument towards it being a more complementary dynamic heading into this probably what will be a small Paul George era. Defensively, like
real quick, Ben.
Sure.
I just have like one more fine point to put on that is like, and not only does like obviously turnovers and live ball turnovers are bad, but it compounds the way we want to play as a team because we also are maniacs on the offensive glass, right? So a bad shot is multiple times better for us with the way we offensive rebound than a turnover is because we're giving Mitchell Robinson, Nimi Keita, Pritchard, who is like weirdly good offensive rebounder, Jordan Walsh, Ugo, like all these maniacs we have unleashed on the offensive glass don't get an opportunity to offensively rebound when you turn the ball over. So these two things feed into each other as well.
Also, like a catch and shoot 3 into a miss rather than like a missed layup or like pounding the ball 7 dribbles, turn around, fade away, where the defense has an opportunity to get in position into rebounding position. The element of surprise, if you will, of it being like a quick, snappy off a Tatum drive and kick, catch and shoot 3. The offensive rebounding potential there, particularly like if you're looking at like Mitchell Robinson. I think much more advantageous for the Celtics as well. Defensively, steal rate, again, getting back to if it's not coughing up possessions prematurely, it's creating new possessions. Paul George, leaps and bounds. I don't know if you can call it leaps and bounds, but 2.6% steal rate compared to Jaylen Brown, 1.5%. Paul George is just, I think, a more capable defender holistically speaking. I think where we've seen Jaylen Brown be really effective, like the obvious thing to call out is the Luka matchup in the finals, but like with the right matchup, you can throw Jaylen Brown at it, like he can just bulldog it and absolutely hound certain types of primary ball handlers to the point where they're completely ineffective for the most part based on normal expectations. Holistically, and cut me off if I'm just wrong here, Spooty, but like Paul George, better at like kind of sitting back on his heels, like not getting back to a cut, just kind of like stopping the overall offensive intent of the opponent and not kind of being like, I guess, having the blinders on and getting too focused on what's immediately in front of him. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, that's an extraordinarily polite way to say that Paul George.
Okay, I was trying to be polite.
Infinity times better off-ball defender than Jaylen Brown is.
Okay,
like if you want, like this version of Paul George, Jaylen Brown is locked in. Jaylen Brown is a better on-ball defender than this version of Paul George. Couple problems: he wasn't always locked in, and 2, there was a lot of times where he completely flatlined our defense because Jaylen is a really bad off-ball defensive player, man. Like. It just is what it is. Like in the stats, back both of these things up really. Steals and charges these are all per 75 possessions, right? Paul George 2.3 steals and charges, 1.2 for Jaylen. Jaylen 2 deflections per 75. Paul George 4.9. Blocks is basically even. Paul George defends more field goals attempts, but Jaylen's field goal differential, so how much he impacts a shooter when he is the guy defending it, is way better than Paul George. Minus 4.2. Paul George is plus 1.4. So on ball, when Jaylen is defending the guy and isn't getting beat backdoor, he is a very impactful defender. The problem is there's limited utility to that because you spend much, especially when you're good on ball, teams are not going after you. So you're going to spend way more time as an off ball defender because you're not going to be attacked. So I would much rather an average on ball defender and an elite off ball guy. This is why I've always argued Tatum is a much better defender than Jaylen Brown.
Mhm.
And Paul George is that. And if you look at their advanced stats, like Paul George basically like doubles and triples them in all like the LeBrons and DRAP, defensive real time adjusted plus all that shit. Paul George is miles and miles ahead of Jaylen Brown on the defensive end. And like he's just bigger, and like being bigger is stupid, and it's like a boomer take, but being huge is really, really helpful defensively in the NBA. And Paul George is fucking huge, man. He's 6'9". He's like 3 inches taller than Jaylen.
Size matters, unfortunately.
For me and you, man. Yeah.
Wow, way to loop me in there, Spoonie. No, you nailed it. It's almost the way we're talking about Paul George. It's like he's just this elite at this point in his career, elite 3-and-D role player. Sam Hauser, literally on steroids, it seems, is made with the comp.
yes, indeed.
I don't know. I don't want to labor the point because there's so much that we're yet to see. Unless you've got more stats, we should probably try and counter ourselves, like where this could all go wrong. Because like getting back to the defensive thing very quickly, what I've long enjoyed about the Jays is if you take OKC as a matchup, for example, there was I think the season before last where we lost the game, unfortunately, as a lot of teams do to OKC, but Jason Tatum guarded Shea in the fourth quarter and did an incredible job and like basically like iced him out of the game. But up until that point, Jaylen Brown guarded him. And I like the idea that we had these two, again, like bulldogs, for lack of a better term, where you could throw Jaylen at the opposition's point of attack and then like rotate in sort of not fatigued Jason Tatum after the fact. We can't do that now. And so what worries me is like this sort of ongoing fatigue on still returning from injury Jason Tatum, where it's like if we do come up against, another all NBA player, if we want to have any chance defensively, we kind of have to throw Jason Tatum at them for the duration of the game. Do you think that's how the defense is going to be structured? Or do you think we're going to be relying more on like holistic team defense and less about sort of individual matchups?
Yeah. I think this is probably the biggest. There's two, I think, big issues, one on each side of the ball. And it's great that Paul George is a great defender. And if you're comparing him directly to Jaylen Brown, he is indeed a worse defender. The issue, I think, is like, and we'll talk about the offense in a minute here, but you're going to need to play Pritchard a lot more for offensive purposes. And Paul George is going to play a lot less games, which is going to put you in positions where you just line up smaller, even though Paul George as a 1-for-1 replacement is bigger and a better defender. I think you're going to probably end up with lineups where, to your point, the best guy to guard Shea is like Derek White or Jason Tatum. And I think Tatum would do a great job on Shea. I don't want him defending Shea in March, for 38 minutes. Like, fuck that. And I think Derek would just straight up get cooked, right? And then, and then it's like, okay, well, are we going to Walshy? And it's like you start having all these sort of like, we need to figure out who this fifth guy in the lineup is here. Whereas if it's Jaylen, it's just like, go nuts, Jaylen, go get on Shea. And I think that is ultimately like a big argument in Jaylen's favor, and why this might not work is that, like, while I do think on balance, globally, I'd much rather have an average on ball and elite off ball. There are teams and situations where, man, it's really nice to have a guy like Jaylen Brown on ball. And obviously all the best teams are probably outside of maybe Denver, are that type of team. Right. Yeah. So, man, like I certainly think we're losing something. We're losing a lot when we lose Jaylen Brown. We're just also, I think, highlighting the places where we're gaining too.
Yeah, I hope that Joe Mazzulla has flashbacks to Walshy on Tyrese Maxey when he's
Yes.
trying to solve that problem. Hopefully not on the fly. Hopefully they're incredibly well prepared going into the season. But and if Walshy just comes back, and I think I haven't got it in front of me, but he's like corner 3-point shooting percentages were like quite efficient. If he can maintain or slightly elevate on that, at slightly higher volume, I'm probably asking a lot of a guy who was drafted deep into the second round and is still incredibly young. Man, that would solve a lot of problems because it kind of gives you that obvious fifth guy where the problem to date has been, yeah, of course you can have Walshy on the court and he's a great defender, particularly 1v1, but you're giving up a little bit of shooting and therefore, spacing. If you can just solve for that, man, like we solve so many problems. I'd probably paint Ugo with that brush as well.
And Baylor, frankly.
Sure.
I mean, Baylor, look, do I trust him to guard Shea for 38 minutes? No, but every time I doubt Baylor, he shoves it in my face with his left hand and a mullet on. So I better just stop doubting this guy, right? I think to your point exactly is that I think Brad was like Ron Harper Jr., Ugo, Jordan Walsh, Baylor. One of these guys is going to make it where I don't feel bad about saying you're playing the last 7 minutes against Oklahoma City. I don't know which one it's going to be, but I think it's totally reasonable to trust that one of those guys can take that jump, take the leap. All you need to do is knock down 38% from the corners on really good volume. Do not hesitate, make those shots. Walshy, come on, or Ugo, one of you two, just do it, and then it solves. You're it's just perfect. Everything fits into place so perfectly.
Yeah, you'll be open. All right, I feel like we've made the case, as Steve Ziller in the chat has said. He does say the ceiling is still low, which I mean, as far as deep playoff rounds, got to get a bucket. I understand that, and I think we kind of saw a version of this in the playoffs, that does still reside within Paul George somewhere. At least I need to feel that when I go to sleep at night. But will he be there? Will he be available? And that is really the key argument that makes all of this unravel. If you're getting the version of Paul George we just described for 67 games or even 58, then it's a different story. But unfortunately, the availability, there's absolutely no reason to believe that suddenly he's going to be healthier for longer. And like we've said, we encourage the steroid vacation mid-season, Spoonie.
Yes.
Anything else that you've sort of prepped for this thesis that we haven't gotten to?
Yeah, I think real quick, the primary thing we're missing offensively, and we sort of touched on it, and is that just the ability to generate shots, but not just any shots at the rim and rim pressure. Brad said one of our primary issues was lack of rim pressure. Well, Jaylen Brown led the NBA with 19.1 drives per game last year. Paul George, I think, is around 5.5. Yeah, 5.7. So it, and then rim field goal attempts per 75 possessions, 2.2 for Paul George, 5.2 for Jaylen Brown. Rim field goal percentage, 55.9 for Paul George, which is fucking terrible for a 6'9" guard, 69.1 for Jaylen Brown. Short mid-range field goal attempts per game. Again, this is all per 75 to regulate for minutes. 6.9 for Jaylen, 3.0 for Paul George. Jaylen's ability to get in the paint, get close to the rim, generate looks. Would you like him to kick it out more and generate more threes? Absolutely. But there's still tremendous value in forcing defense to stay honest, keep help around the rim, and occupy multiple defenders and multiple eyes by getting into the rim. And he's an elite finisher when he gets there. We are losing all of that with Paul George. Although, interestingly enough, Paul George more assists for rim finishes than Jaylen Brown had last year.
Interesting.
Which is, on a per 75 basis. So Paul George generates more rim field goals with his passing than Jaylen Brown did, which, considering the role, is, kind of like a crack in Jaylen's argument here. But yeah, we're going to miss rim pressure.
Well, especially considering who Paul George was dumping it off to. It's not like Embiid played, a shitload of games last year. So what was that assist rate to Adam Boner? We're that's you got to basically put it in the basket for him. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So in summary, I think we talked about the chemistry side of things, right? Very, very important, well documented, very integral part of successful NBA teams. So that's a factor. The fact that he's just an elite 3-and-D wing with incredible efficiency, particularly on like a corner and just overall like catch and shoot 3-point attempts, and the fact that Jason Tatum, probably Peyton Pritchard as well, going to be spoon feeding him in that regard. And then the efficiency maxing, the possession maxing side of things, where turns the ball over less, steals the ball more. Very important in this version of basketball. So we'll miss Jaylen Brown, but it's a bright, immediately short future with Paul George, because like I think ultimately he's like not on the team the year after next, right? So I don't know.
Oh, hell no. We would probably trade him next offseason when he's a huge expiring contract, but that's fine. Thanks, Paul. Just be healthy for the playoffs, buddy. Please,
God, yes. And for your next trade destination, that would also be really good.
Of course.
Now, before we go, First to the Floor live show, we teased the upcoming details for that on the last pod. So for those who haven't been paying attention, we'll be in Boston. The date will be the 29th of October, which is a Thursday in Boston. Venue TBC. We're basically 99% of the way through confirming the venue. It's an awesome venue, one that I think probably a lot of you would have heard of. I have heard of, so very excited to be potentially putting on our live show there. But there'll be more details on that to come. Patreon subscribers are going to get early access to tickets, so that the ticket sale and announcement will go there first. They'll also have a discount on ticket prices as well. But make sure you're following us here on YouTube and pretty much everywhere else, social media, to stay abreast of those details, because, man, that's going to be a lot of fun. And we'll go to some games in Boston while we're out there as well. Spoonie, any closing thoughts before we wrap this one up?
No, live show is going to be great. Kudos to you, Ben, for setting it up, even though you're on the other side of the world and my lazy dumbass is over here. So thank you. Your efforts are very much appreciated. But it's going to be awesome. Yeah. And it's an amazing location. If, we can get the place we're looking for. So, or looking at rather. So it's going to be awesome. I think I'm going to try and get my mom to go. So we'll see. And then I think some of my buddies will go. So we're going to have a really, really good time. It's going to be great.
Sweet. There'll be at least 4 or 5 people in the audience, which will be the most people we've ever done a show in front of.
Specifically.
Can't wait to be there for that. All right, Spoonie. Love your work, man. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Celts.